Theirs was a story of second chances.
They had gone to high school together, and they circled back later and established a relationship.
He was just really, really friendly and sweet.
She was just a beautiful person, inside out.
They went from friends to lovers.
But their flame was extinguished the moment one of them disappeared in the city of brotherly love.
There were prayer vigils and rallies being held throughout the city.
I'm not gonna let it go until I can find out where my daughter's at.
Nobody knew who would have wanted to harm her, and that's what made it such a mystery.
As days turned into weeks, loved ones began to fear the worst, while investigators uncovered one dark secret after the next.
My reaction to both pregnancies was like, man, how did you get yourself into this situation?
They begin to suspect that this is a homicide.
But to stop this roller coaster ride of emotions, detectives would have to spring a trap, one seemingly fit for a blockbuster spy movie.
It was something out of a Hollywood film. I mean, it was that exciting and that dramatic. The lights come on, the sirens come on, and you talk about somebody being caught red-handed.
Monday, July 18, 2005, West Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's 6 p.m., and workers at a local daycare are waiting on one last parent, pregnant 24-year-old LaToya Figueroa, to pick up her daughter, Aisha.
Hi, LaToya. It's Shelly from Aisha's daycare. I was just calling to make sure that you're still going to come pick her up today.
She didn't pick up her daughter that night for daycare. Even at 6 months pregnant, just leaving her. No way. There's no way. It's not even in her physical being to be like that.
Hi, is this Antoine Jenkins?
She took pride in being a mom.
Aisha's not been picked up yet today, and I can't get in touch with her mother. Do you think there's any way that you'd be able to come pick her up?
If she couldn't pick her daughter up, she would have made arrangements for someone else to pick her up.
Fortunately, her father was an emergency contact, so they contacted the father, and he picked his daughter up. He was really concerned.
Toya, why didn't you show up? Aisha can spend the night with me, but give me a call when you can.
Hours later, Antoine still hasn't heard from LaToya. She's also a no-show at the apartment she shares with her uncle.
It's so not in her character. It's so not LaToya. Instantly, you're like, something's wrong. Something happened.
LaToya's family tries desperately to reach her, but their calls go unanswered. So they start reaching out to her closest friends, including LaToya's current boyfriend, Stephen Poche.
Hello? She was 5 or 6 months pregnant, and he was the father.
I was calling to see if you'd heard from LaToya over the last few days.
I seen her yesterday. We went to a doctor's appointment. What's up?
She didn't come home, and she didn't pick up Aisha from daycare yesterday, and that's just not like her.
What? Tell me what's going on.
Stephen was extremely concerned about not only her welfare and well-being, but the well-being of this unborn child.
Despite their best efforts to find LaToya, another day passes with no sign of her. On July 21st, her family files a missing persons report with the Philadelphia Police Department.
LaToya's family let the authorities know right away, this is unlike LaToya. So they really believe that something's wrong.
People were thinking, what could have happened to LaToya? Was she in a hospital somewhere and no one could identify her? Did someone snatch her? And was she still alive? It's a huge mystery.
A mystery that was about to become a rallying cry for a city. One rippling with unspeakable deceit and tangled lies that all culminates in a heart-stopping showdown. Born and raised in West Philadelphia, LaToya Figueroa was a little girl with a big heart.
LaToya would give her shirt off her back for the next person to help them out. Would truly look out for a person without even knowing them.
She was a hard worker. She had a dream of being a nurse.
She put herself on a path to succeed, and she was determined that she wasn't going to let anything stop her.
By the time LaToya reached high school, she had blossomed into a bright and beautiful young woman.
She's like 4'11", maybe 115 pounds, soaking wet. Just little and petite. A beautiful person, inside, out.
When she was just 16, LaToya fell head over heels for a classmate at West Philly High, Antoine Jenkins.
Antoine and Toya, when they first got together, they were very young. They loved each other. They really, really did.
A year later, LaToya became pregnant. Thrilled to become a mother, she and Antoine named their baby girl Aisha.
She was very responsible, very good caretaker, very interested in loving and nurturing her daughter, an involved parent.
She loved being a mom, and she was a great mom.
The love for their child wasn't enough to keep LaToya and Antoine together as a couple. After graduating high school in 1999, the two parted ways.
I believe it was a good relationship. I think that they both were just too young.
But raising a daughter on her own meant LaToya had to make sacrifices, and that meant putting her dreams of nursing school on hold.
She had 3 jobs, and one was a hostess. She worked at a marketing research firm. I mean, so driven, so determined to make sure that her daughter wanted for nothing.
As much as LaToya adored her daughter, at 23, the young woman with a shining smile and killer figure still craved something else.
She wanted to love again. She wanted to share her life with somebody.
As fate would have it, one day in late 2004, she unexpectedly bumped into an old friend.
Toya?
Steven?
Steven had worked at a local oil company, but he had known LaToya since high school.
He was just really, really friendly and sweet.
Look at you. You look good.
You look good yourself, though.
You think?
Trust me, I know.
Toya was pretty, so I think he was attracted to her. Now, her being attracted to him, I can honestly say he's one of the few good guys.
So you should definitely hit me up.
I'd love that. What's your number?
They started off as friends, very good friends. They were both funny, goofy, laid-back type of people.
It wasn't long before the pair's friendship blossomed into something more.
Somewhere along the line, it became an intimate situation, whereas though they went from friends to lovers.
This is good. Like, I love it. Really good.
He was sweet and romantic. He's the type of guy that holds the car door open, buys the flowers, stuff like that.
For LaToya, being with Steven was just easy. Steven was great with Aisha, and that meant the world to LaToya.
A fact that soon became even more important after LaToya broke some news to Steven.
I'm pregnant.
Really?
Yeah.
That February, a few months later, after they reconnected, LaToya found out that she was pregnant.
She was ecstatic. She was totally overjoyed.
Steven was a little shocked when he found out that Toya was pregnant, but he was happy about it. He named the baby and everything.
With Steven's love and support, LaToya's future had never seemed more promising.
She had a beautiful daughter, another child on the way, and a man in her life who loved her. Life was good, and it seemed like it was only going to get better.
But on July 18th, 2005, the life Steven and LaToya were building together comes crashing down. That day, LaToya Figueroa disappears without a trace.
She's literally vanished.
Someone who typically stays connected to their family to go missing and just vanish, that's a huge red flag that something has gone wrong.
In July of 2005, LaToya Figueroa's life seemed blessed in so many ways. Already the proud mother of a 7-year-old daughter, LaToya was now 5 months pregnant with a second child, all thanks to a rekindled relationship with high school friend turned lover, Steven Poche.
They were friends first, and when they became lovers, I was just like, who really doesn't want to fall in love with a friend?
But on Monday, July 18th, after a routine prenatal visit, LaToya failed to pick up her daughter at daycare, triggering alarm bells for her family and friends.
They were hoping for the best, but also thinking of the worst, trying to put whatever clues they had together, piece together some type of story or scenario for what could have happened.
Now, 48 hours after LaToya's disappearance, her friends and family are doing everything they can to find her.
They were placing pamphlets and brochures and pictures of her all around the city of Philadelphia.
Meanwhile, Philadelphia police are ramping up their search efforts as well. They've started by looking at one of the people closest to LaToya.
When you have a case like LaToya's, it was a natural instinct for the police officers to turn to Stephen Pochet because he was the last person that was known to be with her.
When was the last time you saw LaToya?
The last time I saw LaToya was July 18th. Yeah, she had a prenatal appointment that morning, and she wanted me to go with her.
Stephen Pochet says that they went to a doctor's appointment, they went to get something to eat, they went to his apartment, she left, and he didn't see her again after that.
How was she feeling? Was everything okay?
Everything was fine. I mean, she wanted to go shopping for the baby, so I mean, I went to the bank and got out $300.
What time did she leave the house here?
5 o'clock. She had to go pick up Aisha from daycare, yeah.
Emotionally, Stephen was a wreck for multiple reasons because, one, she was pregnant with his child. No one knew where she was at.
Stephen appears genuinely concerned, and when detectives follow up on his story, it checks out.
Stephen's bank records show a withdrawal from that afternoon for around $300. And a neighbor claimed that they saw LaToya walking around 5 p.m. near Stephen's apartment.
Stephen agreed to let the police department search his home. There was no DNA, no hair, no blood, nothing to indicate that any foul play had happened at the house.
But before detectives leave, Stephen drops a bombshell. One that suggests his relationship with LaToya wasn't as seamless as it appeared.
He brings in the possibility of her having other relationships with other men.
He mentions that there's a person that's giving her flowers. He mentions that there's a person that works at the Friday's restaurant. And he also mentions the fact that she has this previous boyfriend who she has a child with.
Could one of these men be involved in LaToya's disappearance? Stephen isn't sure, but he claims LaToya might well have had beef with her ex, daughter Aisha's father, Antoine Jenkins.
He mentioned to police that Antoine was spending more time with his new wife and her kids versus spending time with, her daughter, and LaToya had a real problem with that.
Just for some of the things Toya said herself, like she would have these fiery arguments with the father of her kid, and it was a time where he did struck her.
If the allegations are true, detectives know they need to find Antoine immediately.
It doesn't take them long to find Antoine because he was with LaToya's family, putting up flyers, talking to neighbors, seemingly doing everything in his power to help try to find her.
My partner and I are investigating LaToya's disappearance, and we'd like to ask you a few questions if you don't mind.
Investigators begin by asking Antoine about his relationship with LaToya.
We know y'all have had some problems in the past, and that they might have been about your daughter. Is that true?
Yes. LaToya, she's an amazing mom. She always wanted what was best for our daughter. Sure, we had the occasional fights, but it was never serious.
Because of his sincerity, the police officers kind of ruled him out. He seems to be sincerely concerned about her welfare.
After hitting another dead end, frustrated detectives are finding few leads.
Police officers weren't able to find any activity in her bank accounts, any calls being made from her cell phone, or anything of that nature.
However, LaToya's family refuses to give up hope.
Her father, Melvin Figueroa, a trooper. I mean, this gentleman would not let the story die. He began to pester the media. He pestered the police. He pestered everybody until the story was told.
I got to stick by my daughter's side. I can't turn my back on her.
To help drum up publicity, Melvin Figueroa calls in the help of a prominent local relative, his cousin, Philadelphia City Councilman Juan Ramos.
The city, particularly our police department, is doing everything that they can.
Ramos sets up a hotline, establishes a reward, and helps turn the search for LaToya into a citywide campaign.
The only thing we can do when someone is lost is go look for them, and that's all we're doing at this time and praying.
It's supposed to be the city of brotherly love. You know, if there's love out there, just please share it with us. That's all I have to say right now.
The publicity pays off, and the city bonds with one common goal: to find LaToya Figueroa.
Everyone's on board, the family's searching, the city gives supports. Everyone is doing everything they can to help find LaToya.
Dozens more leads pour in, but unfortunately, none yield any credible evidence as to LaToya's whereabouts. Then on August 16th, a police team makes a shocking discovery in the Brewery Town section of Philadelphia, 5 miles away from where LaToya was last sighted.
They found a badly decomposed body of an African-American woman.
You're still hoping for the best, but in your inside, you're like, there's just no way. Your hopes is starting to be overshadowed by the doubts and, you know, your fears. She may not be coming back.
It's been nearly a month since 24-year-old single mother LaToya Figueroa vanished from the streets of Philadelphia. 5 months pregnant with her second child, LaToya's plight has gripped the community and left her loved ones devastated.
Very disturbing, very like a limbo type feeling. You really don't know how to feel. You know, you're still hoping for the best.
On August 16th, police find a badly decomposed female corpse 5 miles from the West Philly street where LaToya was last spotted, causing the hopes of the community to plummet.
Everyone was terrified this could be LaToya. As soon as the family heard about the discovery, they rushed to the scene.
After securing the crime scene perimeter, investigators take a look at their victim.
All right, how long do you think it'll take to get an autopsy going?
About 24 to 48 hours.
24, 48 hours.
When the official report reaches investigators, the findings are conclusive.
It was not LaToya because of the physical characteristics of this woman.
Their Jane Doe had short hair, whereas LaToya's hair was long. And most importantly, the victim was obviously not 5 months pregnant.
Although LaToya's friends and family breathe a sigh of relief when they hear the news, the fact remains. Police are still no closer to finding LaToya.
There's also some frustration in this case because there are really not a lot of physical clues. She just vanished.
She didn't seem to have any enemies, and there was no reason anyone would want to hurt her.
That is, until detectives come across a police report filed on April 28, 2005, 3 months prior to her disappearance.
LaToya Figueroa is coming home from work, and a woman approaches her from behind, throws her to the ground, kicks her in the stomach, takes her pocketbook, and then jumps in a car with a black male, and they drive away.
According to the incident report, LaToya was over 2 months pregnant at the time.
She was rushed to the ER, and thank goodness her and the baby were okay.
At the time, it was thought to be an unrelated robbery attempt, but in retrospect, police started to wonder if this woman could have possibly been connected somehow to Miss Figueroa's disappearance.
While detectives try to ascertain the identity of LaToya's two assailants, authorities in Philadelphia are beginning to suspect the worst.
LaToya still isn't found, and so at that point, the worst is assumed. She was responsible, she was dependable, didn't seem like the type of individual that would just take off and not notify her family or friends of her whereabouts, particularly when her child would be left alone without provision.
The police begin to suspect that this is a homicide, and they begin to investigate it as that. The only problem is they don't have a body.
But handing the case over to the homicide unit could be the kickstarter this investigation needs.
You know, if you classify it as a homicide investigation, you get the best investigators, the best detective team, presumably, you know, all working on this case.
For the new team of investigators, that means leaving no stone unturned. However, before detectives wade too deep into the murky waters of LaToya's case, they receive a startling call from her cousin, Curtisha Davis.
Detective Jones.
The subject matter, Stephen Poche.
The police receive a tip that there's another woman that Stephen Poche was dealing with.
She was like a high school sweetheart of his. Yeah, he was head over heels for her.
But that's not all.
She was pregnant at the same time as Miss Figueroa.
According to Kertisha, the other woman's name is Lena Thompson.
They were always friends. It'd be an off and on thing with them. With him and Lena, it was like they just stopped for a few, took this long break. And then it was like, oh, well, I'm talking back to her.
Kertisha says that even before Lena or LaToya became pregnant, there was no love lost between the two women.
Lena, you need to leave. I've been telling you about talking to her. Lena, you need to leave.
What are you doing here?
Lena, you need to leave. I told you about talking to her. I told you this was my man. We've talked about this.
Get out of here.
You get out of here. Get your car and keep going.
Anybody that knew him knew who Lena was. They did not like each other. They had words, and it wasn't good words.
How many times I have to tell you, Steven? I don't want you dealing with her. I don't want you dealing with her.
Steven, though, apparently navigated between the two women with the smooth composure of a diplomat.
He did not like that confrontational stuff. He didn't want it to be them bumping heads. So that's pretty much what it was about. Just like, look, let's squash it.
That plan worked until Lena and LaToya each came to Steven with their own surprise announcements.
Steven was shocked when he found out that both girls were pregnant.
Detectives pressed Kertisha for more details on this shocking new lead.
It wasn't like he was trying to get both girls pregnant at the same time. And I know that sounds crazy because it's like, use a condom. However, he loved both girls. He just didn't want to like hurt them.
So here he is trying to juggle these two pregnancies, and everybody's like, wow, this really changes the focus of the case.
Namely, it means police have a potential new suspect in LaToya's disappearance.
The fact he had this other woman pregnant, is she upset that Steven has two people pregnant at the same time? Could she be a possible doer in this crime?
Not to mention how this revelation paints the man at the center of this torrid love triangle in an entirely different light.
That raises red flags. You also have another girl pregnant. That's not good. That's going to make any detective suspicious.
But before investigators sit down with Steven Poche a second time, they first want to talk to the other woman vying for his affections. And what she's about to say would quash any doubts as to who was the victor in this jilted game of hearts.
The situation was a ticking time bomb. It was about to explode, and someone was going to get hurt in the fallout.
As the search for missing 24-year-old mother, LaToya Figueroa, reaches the end of its first month, detectives have discovered that the father of LaToya's unborn child, Steven Poche, is involved in not one, but two steamy relationships.
He is stuck between a relationship with two women. Two women he has pregnant at the same time.
Steven responded to them both being pregnant like any guy would. Like, oh, what did I just do?
Naturally, investigators are curious if this development had any bearing on LaToya's disappearance. So they sit down with Steven's other love interest, Lena Thompson.
Listen, we know that Steven Poche is the father of your child and LaToya's. That must have made you upset.
I just wanted Steven to be happy.
Did you have anything to do with her disappearance?
No.
What did you do when you found that LaToya was pregnant with his child too?
Steven didn't even want that baby. He wanted LaToya to have an abortion.
There's this phone conversation that happens between LaToya, the girlfriend, and Steven, where the girlfriend and Steven are asking LaToya to get an abortion. And she says no, that is not something that she would be willing to do. And so for Steven, I could imagine that he was feeling like he was losing control.
Police know that when a situation like this one spirals out of control, bad things can happen. Detectives can't help but wonder if LaToya's street robbery 4 months earlier wasn't as random as it first appeared.
There were rumors that there was a guy who had some females attack LaToya, made it look like a robbery, and that this was going to be a kind of on-street abortion by beating her in the stomach to the point where she miscarries.
Now, you and Steven wouldn't have had anything to do with that attack, would you? Seems like a pretty good way to get rid of a baby, huh?
That's crazy. Like, I had nothing to do with that. I swear.
The rumors of the attack were just that, rumors. Nothing the police found directly tied Lena or Stephen directly to the attack. Lena's alibi on the day of LaToya's disappearance checked out, so they had to let her go.
But investigators still have a few questions for Stephen, so they sit down with him for a second time.
Why didn't you tell us about Lena's pregnancy?
Because it had nothing to do with this.
Really? Asking LaToya to have an abortion had nothing to do with her or her disappearance?
I didn't ask her to have an abortion. Who said that? She disappears all the time. She does this thing all the time.
This is what she did when she got mad. She shut everybody out, and I don't know if she would like leave town or whatever the situation may be, but she was shut down and she was just like not want to be bothered with anybody.
However, those who know LaToya best say that she would never do anything of the kind.
I never thought that LaToya had taken off. Her whole life was her daughter. So to believe that she would just leave her like that, never.
There's something about his mannerisms, his gestures, the story he's telling. The police officers are suspicious.
And detectives aren't the only ones who have become suspicious about Stephen's story in the month following LaToya's disappearance.
We just feel as though he knows something because he was the last person to see her.
LaToya's family really believed he had something to do with her disappearance. They just couldn't prove it.
Through it all, Stephen continues to proclaim his innocence.
I didn't murder anybody. Why are you not listening to me?
Emotionally, Stephen was a wreck. He was like, yo, why are her family members and stuff blaming me? Not only was he being blamed, but he was being targeted.
But without any physical evidence linking Poche to LaToya's disappearance, there's nothing anyone can do.
Okay, so do you have anything on me? Because if you don't have anything on me, I'm ready to go.
They interrogated him for hours on end. He was able to be let go because they had no proof he was showing any foul play in the whole ordeal.
If you don't have the body, you can't have a murder.
That is until an unlikely witness steps forward with a chilling story. A story that may just finally reveal what happened to LaToya Figueroa.
An informant contacts the Philadelphia Police Department and tells him that a man calls him, wants him to get a van, a shovel, and of all things, a body bag.
Four weeks after LaToya Figueroa mysteriously disappeared, the Philadelphia Police Department receives a shocking call that will change the course of this investigation.
The Philadelphia Police Department receives a tip from a concerned citizen that an individual that he knew had contacted him about getting his hands on a body bag.
Why else would somebody want a body bag if they weren't intending to put a body in it?
According to the tipster, William Mason, he believes the body could be that of LaToya.
Obviously, that got the attention of the detectives right away, and so too did the identity of Mason's friend. It was Stephen Poche.
Stephen Poche had contacted him about getting his hands on a truck, a body bag, shovels, and was interested in hiding or burying a body.
However, investigators are initially suspicious. For starters, William Mason has a criminal record.
Not only did Mason have a record, but police had already searched Poche's home, and there was no evidence to indicate that a crime had taken place there.
Even while they're feeling skeptical about the tip, there's a sense of desperation because at this point, LaToya's been missing for a month. They were running out of any other credible leads.
But there's still one thing missing from William Mason's story: a body. So investigators hatch a plan of their own.
They have the informant contact Stephen Poche to let him know that he got the items that he wanted them to get.
The cops say, okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll give you a van, we'll give you some stuff, and we'll send you down there with him.
The police were going to set a trap. They're going to follow this informant, and they're going to trap them.
On the night of August 19th, 2005, Mason arranges to meet Stephen at a vacant lot in Chester, Pennsylvania, 15 miles southwest of Philadelphia.
Hey man, what took so long?
Chester is like a rural area outside of Philadelphia. If you're going to hide a body or dump a body, you'd be more inclined to do it in Chester County, thinking that no one would ever find it. He's in his vehicle. The friend who's supposed to help him move the body is in that separate vehicle. But little does Stephen know that friend has some type of GPS connection to the police. So they're following Stephen and the friend.
The police follow them down to Chester. They see Stephen Poche go into this field on 4th Street, go through a hole in the fence.
Man, this place creeps me out.
What you doing, man? Hand me a soap. Hand me
But as Stephen starts to dig, law enforcement's surveillance team notes something troubling.
Stephen had 245s and a bulletproof vest on.
They find that he's armed, and they find that he is apparently ready to do harm to someone, and perhaps even the person who helped him to move that body.
Fearful that William Mason could be the next victim, officers move in.
As Stephen is about to take the body out, the lights come on, the sirens come on, and you talk about somebody being caught red-handed.
Suspect has fled the scene. All officers be advised. Suspect is armed and dangerous.
Philly police apprehended Stephen at the scene and took him into custody without a shot being fired.
With Stephen Poche now safely in custody, a team of officers searches the surrounding area and soon finds what's left of LaToya's remains.
When they found her body, it was badly decomposed, but then she has these tattoos on her back, and they're able to identify her. And then they find these fetal bones with the body, just heartbreaking.
She had been in a trash bag for 30 days in 100+ degree weather, and she had went from 130 pounds to 30 pounds when they found her. Very devastating.
The Delaware County coroner examines the body, and they find that the cause of death is asphyxiation.
For friends and family, it's a devastating turn of events. But after over a month of anguish, any answer is better than the agony of the unknown.
Probably one of the hardest things that a police officer has to do is to tell a loved one that they have discovered, found that the person that they've been looking for all this time is in fact dead.
It was relief. It was relief as far as you don't want to be in that limbo area anymore. I'm not wondering if it's this way or if it's that way.
But if Stephen Poche hadn't panicked and led police to the body, there's a good chance he may have never been caught.
There was no evidence in his home that there was a struggle or if that she was there. He cleaned up behind himself pretty well.
Nevertheless, Stephen did make the mistake of trying to move LaToya's body. And when he's taken into custody, he makes a shocking confession.
It was all an accident. I didn't mean to kill her.
Stephen is arrested and gives a statement to the detectives that he killed her, that it was an accident in response to a fight that they were having.
Stephen puts this all on LaToya. He claims that during an argument over the other girlfriend and the fact that she's pregnant, that LaToya gets agitated and attacks him. And he trying to restrain her.
Poche says she's hitting him, and he grabs her by the neck in order to get her to stop hitting him, that he just held on too long. And that once she stopped him moving after that, he just panicked.
Oh my gosh, baby. Baby, are you okay? Babe, wake up, please.
Regardless of Stephen's story, that evening, detectives charge him with LaToya's murder and the death of their unborn child, a charge that potentially carries the death penalty in the state of Pennsylvania.
I don't really believe in hate per se, but hate would definitely be a close word to explaining how I felt. To dip him in boiling hot water, that would be too easy for him.
But would the city of brotherly love feel the same way after they hear Stephen's story play out in the courtroom? It's a question everyone's about to find out.
We have a situation where Stephen Poche didn't shoot LaToya Figueroa, didn't stab her, choked her to death, but that's manslaughter, not murder.
On August 26, 2005, the body of 24-year-old expectant mother LaToya Figueroa is finally laid to rest. Those who file in to mourn the loss are still trying to cope with the shocking reality that LaToya died at the hands of her unborn child's father, Stephen Poche.
This was a heinous crime. Stephen Poche was charged with killing LaToya and their unborn child.
They literally court him in the process of moving her body. And just the evilness that's with him, anger, could not even express or explain how I felt at that moment.
The community response was, of course, outrage.
Charged with first-degree murder, Stephen faces the death penalty if convicted. His defense team fears the community's animosity can make getting a fair shake next to impossible. So in the final hours before the trial, they make a bold move.
This was a death penalty case. So we know that we had to work out any deal we could have to avoid him being executed. And that's why at the very last minute, the 11th hour, the Commonwealth agreed that if he requested a judge trial instead of a jury trial, they would take death off the table and he'd be facing life in prison.
As far as prosecutors are concerned, that's as much leniency as Stephen Poche deserves. In opening arguments, they assert LaToya's death was the result of Stephen's selfish and senseless actions.
He had another girl pregnant, was moving in with her. He didn't care about LaToya and his other child. And all he could see is trying to figure out how to get rid of this so that he can think he could be happy with this other girl and his other baby.
He told her, you have to abort this because otherwise they're going to destroy everything I'm trying to do. She refused to do that.
For the prosecution, Stephen had a clear motive. The easiest way out of this predicament was to get rid of LaToya once and for all.
LaToya Figueroa was beginning to be a strain on his other relationship. And so I think when he looked at the possibility of this child coming along, it was a commitment he was not willing to take.
It's the state's contention that following LaToya's prenatal appointment on July 18th, both she and Stephen returned to his apartment where he began his premeditated attack.
Yes, I do!
Following the murder, he cleaned up the scene. He wrapped LaToya's body in plastic bags and dumped her in a vacant lot in Chester, Pennsylvania. And he did everything he could to make it look like he had nothing to do with the crime.
And it's about a month later, when the heat really gets turned up on Poche, that prosecutors believe that he had concocted a plan to kill William Mason and frame him for the crime.
It was just a sick and unbelievable story all the way around.
The prosecutor's office was really focused on the fact that Mr. Poche had two young ladies pregnant at the same time, and he was the last person with her. They had this tip from William, and of course, the icing on the cake was a confession or the statement from Stephen.
But it's Stephen's very statement to police that's the crux of his defense team's case.
We don't want to hide his confession. We want to show his confession front and center because it proves exactly what we've been saying from day one. This was voluntary manslaughter, sudden and intense passion, and his confession shows that.
First-degree murder carries a much higher penalty than a manslaughter type of killing, where it's really a killing of circumstance.
Clearly, it wasn't premeditated. Clearly, it wasn't intentional. He freaked out, he choked her, and pressed too hard.
It's an assertion that many courtroom observers find hard to believe.
A person is going to be reacting, right? They're going to be flailing. Their face is going to probably be changing color. It's hard to accidentally choke somebody to death.
Was LaToya's death an accident or murder? Unlike most trials, the answer to that question is solely up to the presiding judge to decide. On October 17, 2006, after 7 days of testimony, he hands down his verdict.
The judge found Stephen guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for LaToya Figueroa and 1 for her unborn child.
At the end of this, satisfaction was felt by the entire Philadelphia community.
The outcome of the case basically gives closure to the family, to the city, to those who were concerned about this missing young woman. The city can move on, the family can move on and begin healing.
Stephen Poche is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But for LaToya's devastated friends and family, The sentencing is no substitute for their loss or the grief they still feel because of one man's self-serving actions.
For a person to be so selfish and so senseless, you know, to rob us of her, you know, rob us of her beauty, of her presence. You know, at the end of the day, God is the judge, and he's judging him. He's going to judge him. He's got to answer for what he's done.
This case involving Stephen Poche and LaToya Figueroa, a tragedy all around. Stephen Poche is still alive. His family can come to see him anytime they want in jail. But LaToya Figueroa, the family, the best thing that they can do is to go to the cemetery. So although it's a tragedy all around, it's by leaps and bounds much more of a tragedy for the family of LaToya Figueroa.
Anything personal about my private life. Dell swung the van around a corner with the grace of a shopping trolley in a hurricane. Of course he ain't. We're not that private, are we? We're public figures, the trotters of Nelson Mandela House. But what about, you know, me and Cassandra, our hiccups? Dell rolled his eyes. He's not going to want to know about your little problems in the bedroom department. Rodney, though, strictly speaking, if you're having hiccups in the bedroom, you're probably doing it wrong. I told you that in confidence. Rodney hissed, his face reddening to the color of a ripe tomato. And I'm keeping it in confidence. Dell shouted back, I'm not going to be telling him about jiffins and what Cassandra wears. I've got more class than that, mostly. Chapter 2, The Interrogator. Justin was the kind of man who wore spectacles not because he needed them, but because they made his expensive degree look even more expensive. His office was a minimalist vacuum of white walls and overpriced Scandinavian furniture. He looked at the Trotter brothers as if they were a rare species of beetle that had accidentally crawled onto his silk tie. Sorry to keep you waiting, Justin said, his voice dripping with the practiced sincerity of a BBC middle manager. It's been a particularly busy morning. Now, I've got all the basic details about your business career, the watches, the bottled water, the pre-war lead soldiers. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you. Dell leaned back, crossing his legs and adjusting his tie. He felt at home. Give Del Boy an audience and a chance to rewrite history, and he was more dangerous than a shark in a tuxedo. How you started, how you became so successful, Justin continued, leaning forward. But more importantly, your lives and your raison d'etre. Dell blinked. Oh, no. Laboratory Garni. I don't use that stuff. It's all natural. This hair. Rodney groaned into his hands. He means reason for being. Dell. I knew that. Dell snapped. I was just checking if he did. Right then, Justin. Where shall I start? Up to a few years ago, we were just very ordinary people living very ordinary lives. Weren't we, Rodney? Rodney gave a hollow laugh. Ordinary. Dell, our childhood involved hiding from the rent collector behind a sofa that was technically also being repossessed. Details. Dell waved a hand dismissively. And then, as you know, One day I discovered an historic and almost priceless artifact, a watch, a Harrison Lesser watch. Found it in the back of a garage. It was like a sign from the gods of commerce. Chapter 3, The Golden Age. For a brief, shimmering moment in the mid-90s, the Trotters had been kings. The novel of their lives had transitioned from a gritty social drama to a glossy jet-set thriller. Anyway, Del continued, his eyes glazing over with the memory of pure, unadulterated wealth. At first, we didn't know what to do with it. We thought about donating it to the British Museum as a national treasure. We really did. We felt a sense of duty to the crown. We thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Rodney corrected. And then we decided to flog it. Del grinned. 6.5 million quid. Justin, can you imagine that? 6.5 million of the Queen's finest nuggets. We divvied the dosh up, making sure our Uncle Albert got a nice little drink, bless his old seafaring soul, and we thought of others. We donated to charity. Enormously, of course. We bought a round of drinks for the whole Mag's Head, Rodney whispered. That was our charity work. It felt like a charity. Del insisted. Have you seen the state of Trigger? He needs all the help he can get. So, eventually, we had to start thinking about our future. We sought out a city stockbroker, a man with a tie thinner than a strand of spaghetti and a brain like a calculator. He advised us to invest in a new and vibrant venture, a Central American market. Del stood up, pacing the small office. It was attracting massive funds from all over the world. We were making more money than the Royal Mint. We weren't just flat. Justin, we were ascendant. Chapter 4, The Fall of the Empire. The flashback in Del's mind was vivid. He remembered the heat of the Caribbean, the smell of expensive sun cream, and the feeling of a platinum credit card in his pocket, a card that felt like it had the power to stop the rotation of the earth if he swiped it hard enough. He remembered Raquel, his significant other, looking like a movie star in a wide-brimmed hat. He remembered young Damien, the fruit of his loins, playing on the deck of a yacht. He remembered Rodney and Cassandra, looking like they finally belonged in a world where the wine didn't come from a box. And then the music changed. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was the sound of a phone not ringing. It was the sight of a computer screen flickering with red numbers that shouldn't have been there. She's into superstitions. The radio had been playing in the hotel lobby. Livin' La Vida Loca. It turned out, Del said, his voice dropping an octave, that negotiations between the Central American countries had collapsed, wiped out. The market didn't just crash. It evaporated. It was like someone had pulled the plug on the ocean. We'd even paid for the hotel on a credit card. Rodney added, the ghost of the trauma still visible in his eyes. A credit card which was withdrawn while we were still at the breakfast buffet. I was halfway through a bowl of exotic fruit, and suddenly I was an international pauper. Dell nodded solemnly. But Derek Trotter is, if nothing else, a creative businessman. I came up with a solution. We had to leave. Fast. We ran, Rodney said. We literally ran for the airport while the concierge was still looking for the bill. Chapter 5. The Financial Wilderness. The return to the UK was not met with a ticker tape parade. The news of the Trotter collapse had traveled faster than a Peckham rumor. How long did it take for the news to hit the UK? Justin asked, scribbling notes furiously. About as long as it took for someone to push a button on the internet. Dell sighed. Suddenly, all our so-called business associates wouldn't return our calls. We were cast into a financial wilderness. It was like the desert, but with more rain and less sand. And then there was Mike. Rodney reminded him. Dole's face darkened. Mike Fisher, the landlord of the Nag's Head, a man who had seen the Trotters as his ticket out of the pub trade. Mike invested his life savings in our venture, Dell explained. He actually remortgaged the pub. He's in prison now, awaiting trial. The fraud squad claims he tried to recoup his losses by embezzling the brewery. Never was a man more innocent. He confessed to everything, Dell, Rodney pointed out. He was under duress, Dell shouted. The pressure of the brewing industry is immense. The narrative shifted to the waiting room of the court. The atmosphere was thick with the smell of cheap coffee and the nervous sweat of Peckham's finest. Denzel was pacing, wearing the marble floor down. Uncle Albert was sitting there, looking like a weary old owl. Trigger was. Well, Trigger was staring at a wall, possibly having a conversation with his own shadow. Trig, if I go in there and tell the truth, Denzel had said, Dell and Rodney are going to be spending the next 5 years sharpening Jeffrey Archer's pencils. I'm going to tell them I hear voices. Trigger had replied, with the terrifying sincerity of the truly confused. Chapter 6. The Wrong Side of the Grave. The funeral of Uncle Albert should have been a moment of dignified sorrow. Instead, it was a masterclass in Trotter-esque absurdity. The family stood in the biting cold of a coastal cemetery. Dell was genuinely heartbroken. Albert had been their anchor, the man who had survived the Battle of the Baltic only to be nearly killed by Dell's cooking. I feel bad, Dell whispered to Rodney as they stood by the grave, leaving him here on his own while we were off globe-trotting. We should have taken him to Barbados. He didn't have a passport. Dell, Rodney reminded him. He thought the Germans were still looking for him. They stood amongst a group of strangers. A woman named Marion was crying. A man named Roland was complaining about Albert's wartime sagas. God, he did go on, didn't he? Roland sneered. Never bloody stopped. The John Wayne of the East End. Those blood began to simmer. It reached boiling point. He stepped forward, his eyes blazing. You got to remember that a lot of blokes lost their lives for our liberty. just so that 50 years later, brats like you would have the freedom to knock them. You want to go outside and have a chat. Roland? Calm down, Del, Rodney pleaded. It was only when the young boy, Damien, looked up at a passing plane and asked if it was a Spitfire that the reality hit them. Wait a minute, Del said, looking at the headstone. Bunny. Why did you call him Bunny? Because his surname was Warren, Roland said. Albert Warren. Raff. The silence that followed was heavy. Rodney, Del whispered, his face turning ashen. We're at the wrong funeral. Oh, let's go. Rodney hissed, grabbing Del's arm. They fled the cemetery like grave robbers who had forgotten their shovels. Chapter 7, The Phoenix Arises, sort of. Back in Nelson Mandela House, the grandeur of the millionaire years felt like a dream someone else had had. The flat was cramped, the wallpaper was peeling, and the Inland Revenue was knocking on the door with the persistence of a woodpecker on a metal pole. The court declared me bankrupt, Del announced to the family. But don't worry, I've worked it all out. I'm a trader. I could sell rice to the Chinese. The firm's been liquidized, Del, Rodney said, sitting at the kitchen table. Disqualified. Del corrected. I've been disqualified from running it. That doesn't mean the company is dead. We just need a new managing director. Someone young. Someone enthusiastic. Someone with to GCEs. Rodney looked up, a glimmer of hope or madness in his eyes. Me? Yes, you, Rodney. You can take over Trotter's independent traders. Legally, there's nothing to stop you. You're clean, mostly. And so, the new era began. Rodney Trotter, managing director, Del took a back seat, or rather, he sat in the front seat and shouted directions while Rodney tried to drive. They were back in business. They were trading again. The goal, $48,750 for pounds. That was the debt. That was the mountain they had to climb. Chapter 8, The Golden Ticket. The idea for Gold Rush came to Del like a divine revelation during a late-night session of channel hopping. It's a game show, Rodney, Del shouted, bursting into the living room. Jonathan Ross, you can win 100,000 quid. It's the fastest game show on TV. Del, you think King Edward introduced the potato to England? Rodney said flatly. I didn't hear the question properly. Del insisted. I've worked it out. I'm going to apply. This time next year, we'll be millionaires. Again. This time last week, we were millionaires, Cassandra pointed out from the kitchen. But Del was already filling out the form. He wasn't just a bankrupt salesman from Peckham anymore. In his mind, he was a Renaissance man, a lover of fine wines, the theater, and 16th century Italian art. He was Derek Trotter, and the world hadn't seen the last of him. Chapter 9, The Brunei Connection. The telephone in the Trotter household was a fickle instrument. Sometimes it brought news of a consignment of Hooky v. Sears. Other times, it was just the electric company wondering if Dell intended to pay his bill within the current century. One evening, as Rodney was trying to maintain a facade of managing director gravitas, the phone rang. Trotter's Independent Traders, how may I help you? Rodney said, his voice an octave deeper than usual. Good evening, a voice responded, accented and dripping with importance. I am wishing to speak with managing director. This is he, Rodney said, puffing out his chest. My name is Rodney Trotter. I am representative of the Sultan of Brunei, the voice continued. Rodney's heart did a little tap dance against his ribs. He looked at Dell, who was currently trying to clean a fake Rolex with a bit of spit and a rag. Dell, it's the Sultan of Brunei. Dell stopped rubbing the watch. Yeah, and I'm the Pope's golf partner. Give it here. But Rodney was already hooked. How may I be of assistance, sir? His Highness has seen your advertisement in the newspaper. He would like you to fly to Brunei and be his consultant. Rodney's eyes glazed over. He could see it now. Gold-plated yachts, silk robes, and a world where duty-free wasn't just a suggestion. Consultant. On what, specifically? Recently, the voice said, suppressed laughter starting to bubble through the accent, His Highness bought a crappy old three-wheeled van, and he wants to know how to start it on cold mornings. The line exploded into the unmistakable, high-pitched cackle of Mickey Pierce. Rodney slammed the phone down. I knew it was him. I was just winding him up. Dell shook his head. Rodney, you're about as good at winding people up as a sundial in a coal cellar. Get back to your paperwork. Chapter 10, Fantasy Therapy. Rodney's marriage to Cassandra was, in his own words, a series of minor hiccups in the bedroom department. To address this, Rodney had turned to the modern equivalent of a witch doctor, a lifestyle magazine. It's called Fantasy Therapy. Cass, Rodney explained that night, his voice hushed. This expert in America says our troubles stem from memory baggage. We need to become different people, reborn. Cassandra looked at him over the top of her book. Different people. Do I get to be someone who lives in a house without a yellow vent parked outside? No, it's about iconoclastic autosuggestion. Rodney insisted. We write down our fantasy figure, and for one night, the other person becomes that figure. No dressing up required. It's all in the mind. All right, Cassandra sighed. I'll try anything to stop you talking about memory baggage. They wrote down their choices. Cassandra handed her slip to Rodney. He opened it and blinked. The bill. You want me to be a copper? Just a position of authority. Rodney, she said, a mischief glint in her eye. Rodney's own fantasy involved a certain gladiator, or maybe a heroic figure from a film he'd seen recently. He didn't say it, but he had a plan. The next evening, the plan went horribly wrong. Del burst into the flat to find Cassandra dressed in a full policewoman's uniform, complete with a baton and a look of professional disapproval. Rodney, on the other hand, was standing there in a leather tunic, looking like he'd been rejected from a low-budget production of Spartacus. "Oh, my God," Del shouted, nearly dropping his bag of takeaway. "I thought we were being raided. Cassandra, I didn't know you'd joined the force. And Rodney, what are you? A Roman centurion with a vitamin D deficiency. It's a fancy dress party. Del," Rodney yelled, his face turning a shade of purple that matched his tunic. "We're going to a party. My ex-boss at the bank invited us." At 5:30, Del asked, skeptical, "A bit early for a rave, isn't it?" "It's an early party for people who have to be up for work." Rodney grabbed Cassandra's arm. "Come on, Reg Hollis, let's go before he starts asking for our badges." Chapter 11, The Lights of Gold Rush. The BBC television studios were a labyrinth of cables, tired security guards, and the smell of industrial-grade hairspray. Del stood in the wings of the Gold Rush set, adjusting his suit. He told the producers he was a connoisseur of the arts. He told them his hobbies included fine wines and 16th century Italian Renaissance art. In reality, his knowledge of fine wine stopped at anything that didn't have a screw top. And the only Renaissance art he owned was a framed picture of a crying boy that he'd bought at a car boot sale in 1984. Welcome to another edition of the show that is taking the country by storm. The voice of Jonathan Ross boomed through the speakers. This is Thursday. This is live. This is Jonathan Ross, and this is Gold Rush. Del stepped onto the stage, his smile fixed, his rings gleaming under the studio lights. Beside him were his competitors, Mike Wallace, a financial advisor who looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, and Janice Scott, who seemed genuinely terrified of the cameras. And finally, Ross announced, "We have Derek Trotter from Peckham." Derek is a businessman who lives with Raquel, his significant other. His pastimes include fine wines, the theater, and 16th century Italian Renaissance art. Del gave a thumbs up. "Lovely jubbly. Jonathan, just happy to be here for the culture, you know." Chapter 12, The Rainbow Road. The game began with a flurry of questions. Del's finger was poised over the buzzer like a predator waiting for a slow-moving gazelle. Whose famous diary recorded the plague and the Great Fire of London? Ross asked. Del hit the buzzer. Mrs. Dale's. The studio went silent. Ross blinked. Nice try, Del, but I'm afraid that's not right. You're frozen now. Eventually, through a series of fluke errors by his opponents, Del found himself as the first challenger on the Rainbow Road. He stood in the center of the stage, a 1-pound coin clutched in his hand, his guaranteed prize. Whatever else happens, that's yours, Ross said. Just make sure it ain't Irish. A. Del quipped, winking at the camera. He breezed through the early rounds. He knew Kilimanjaro was in Africa mostly because he'd once tried to sell a crate of t-shirts with the mountain printed on the wrong side. He survived a challenge from Janice. The money climbed. 10,000, 25,000. And then the green question. In which state was President Kennedy born? Del hesitated. He remembered the news footage. He remembered the tragedy. Well, when he was assassinated in 1963, he was in a terrible state. He died. I need the name of the state. Del, Ross urged. Texas, Florida, or California? Del sweated. He used his shot in the dark. Florida, he shouted. No, Ross sighed. It was Texas. But you played your shot, so you're still in the game for the penalty question. Chapter 13, The Ravel Debacle. The penalty question was worth 50,000 pounds. If Del got it right, he'd move to the final gold question for 100,000. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and the Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Del's brain stalled. Classical music. He was a man of the people. He liked the theme from Z Cars and anything by Tom Jones. He needed his SOS. He needed his brother. My brother, Rodney, Del said, he's a graduate to GCEs. He knows his classics. Back in the flat, the phone rang. Rodney, still in his Spartacus tunic, answered it. Hello, Rodney. It's Jonathan Ross. Oh, piss off, Mickey, you're getting on my tits now, Rodney yelled. Rodney, it's not Mickey, it's the BBC. Your brother is on 50 grand. Realization hit Rodney like a bucket of cold water. He listened to the question. Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Ravel. Rodney shouted into the phone. I'm 100% sure, Del, it's Ravel. Del, back in the studio, looked at the camera with the confidence of a man who had just been handed the keys to the Bank of England. It's Ravel, Jonathan. My brother knows. He's got the brains in the family. Are you sure, Derek? Ross asked. You don't have to take his answer. No. Rodney's spot on. Ravel. The buzzer sounded a long, agonizing drone of failure. Derek, Ross said, his voice filled with genuine pity. That was the wrong answer. It was Segovia. Del's face fell. The 100,000 pounds vanished into the ether. What? But Rodney said he's got to GCEs. Chapter 14, The Return of the Conqueror Not. The journey back to Peckham was long and silent. Del walked through the door of the flat to find Rodney and Cassandra waiting, still dressed as a gladiator and a policewoman. What happened? Rodney asked, his voice small. What happened? Del exploded. What happened is that you're a dipstick, Rodney. That's what happened. Everyone knows that Ravel makes shoes. It was a trick question, and you fell for it. Shoes, Rodney stammered. Gravel wrote Bolero. I don't care if he wrote the Bible. He makes shoes in the Peckham High Street. You lost us 50 grand. The argument raged until the phone rang again. It was the producer of Gold Rush. Hello. Yes, this is Derek Trotter. What? No. Really? Dell turned to the room, his eyes wide. There's been a mistake. The producer says it was Ravel. Segovia was just the guitarist who performed it or something. They've checked the facts. I can have the 50,000 pounds and come back on the show next week. The room erupted. Rodney cheered. Raquel cried. Even Cassandra hugged her prisoner. See, Dell shouted, his voice reaching a crescendo of triumph. I knew I was right. I knew the Trotters were back. He grabbed the phone again. Yeah. Well, I tell you what we're going to do. Give all the money to charity. Yeah. And if you phone here once again, I'm going to come down there and kick your arse into shredded duck. He slammed the phone down. Dell, Rodney screamed. What did you do that for? Because, Dell said, a sly grin spreading across his face, that wasn't the producer. I could hear the jukebox at the Nag's Head. That was Mickey Pierce again. He sat down, exhausted but undefeated. Don't worry, Rodney. This time next year, we'll be millionaires. And in the heart of Peckham, for the 1,000th time, they almost believed him. Chapter 15, The Morning After the Morning After. The following morning, Nelson Mandela House felt like the setting of a hungover Greek tragedy. The adrenaline of the gold rush debacle had dissipated, leaving only the cold reality of the Inland Revenue's interest rates and the lingering smell of Raquel's burnt toast. Dell sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea that was mostly condensed milk and desperation. He was staring at a pile of bills as if he could intimidate them into paying themselves. Rodney, Dell barked as his brother shuffled into the kitchen, looking like a man who had spent the night sleeping in a tumble dryer. Where's the inventory for the new stock? Rodney groaned, rubbing his eyes. Dell, it's 8 in the morning. And technically, since I'm the managing director, shouldn't I be asking you for that? Dell let out a short, sharp laugh. Managing director. Rodney, you're the only managing director in London who still gets an allowance from his older brother. Now, where is it? It's in the van. Rodney sighed. But it's mostly those unbreakable umbrellas we bought from Boyke. I tried one this morning. It snapped the second a light breeze hit it. Dell didn't look up. That's because you don't know the technique. Rodney, you have to open them with finesse. They're not umbrellas. They're aerodynamic sunshades. It's all in the marketing. Raquel entered, Damien trailing behind her. The boy was wearing a t-shirt that said Future Millionaire, a gift from Dell that currently felt like a cruel joke. Dell, we've had another letter from the council, Raquel said, her voice weary. They're asking about the arrears again. Dell stood up, smoothing his waistcoat. "Don't you worry about the council. Sweetheart, I've got a meeting this afternoon with a very influential business associate. Top-level stuff. Is it Trigger?" Rodney asked, deadpan. Del paused, his hand on the door handle. "He might be in the vicinity. Yes, but that's irrelevant. We are the Trotters. We've been down before, but we always bounce back. Like those rubber balls that never stop. They're called super balls." Rodney corrected. "And eventually, they hit someone in the eye and get confiscated." Chapter 16, The Nag's Head Resurrection. The Nag's Head was the spiritual home of the Trotter Empire, a place where legends were told and where beer was served at a temperature that could only be described as room adjacent. As Del and Rodney walked in, a hush fell over the bar. It was the kind of silence usually reserved for a funeral or a surprise inspection by the health department. Trigger was at his usual spot, looking as if he hadn't moved since the mid-70s. Denzel was nursing a half-pint, and Sid was behind the bar, polishing a glass that looked like it had been used to store gravel. "All right, Dave," Trigger said, nodding at Rodney. "It's Rodney," Rodney sighed, "for the 10,000th time." "Heard about the show, Sid said, leaning over the bar. "Me and the wife were watching. She said she liked your suit. Said it made you look like a very successful magician." Del ignored the barb. "It's all part of the game." Sid, "High stakes, high rewards. We were testing the waters, weren't we?" Rodney, "I was testing the limits of human embarrassment," Rodney muttered. "Don't listen to him," Del said, ordering a large cognac. "He's got executive stress. Now, Denzel, I hear you've been having trouble with your suspension." Denzel looked up, wary. "How do you know that?" "I have my sources," Del said, leaning in. "And it just so happens that Trotter's independent traders under the new and vibrant leadership of Rodney here has just acquired a consignment of high-performance shock absorbers. Straight from Germany." "Germany?" Denzel asked. "Or a garage in Lewisham?" Del looked hurt. "Denzel, would I lie to you? They're military grade, built to withstand a direct hit from a tank. Your van will feel like a magic carpet." "How much?" Denzel asked, his curiosity getting the better of his common sense. "For you, a mere £100, plus a small administration fee for the managing director." Del nudged Rodney. Rodney, tell him about the quality." Rodney looked at Denzel, then at Del, then at his beer. "They're round, and they've got springs, I think." "See?" Del beamed. "The man's a genius. Right, let's seal the deal. Sid, a round for my friends. On Rodney's tab." Chapter 17, The Suitcase in the Van. The sun was beginning to set over Peckham, casting long, orange shadows over the estate. Del and Rodney were back at the van, the shock absorbers which looked suspiciously like painted PVC pipes safely stowed in the back. Dell reached into the van and pulled out a battered leather suitcase. He handled it with a reverence usually reserved for religious relics. "This is it, Rodney," Dell said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "the beginning of the comeback." "Dell, it's a suitcase," Rodney said. "What's in it? More umbrellas." Dell popped the latches. Inside were hundreds of small, plastic devices that looked like a cross between a calculator and a remote control. "Electronic personal organizers," Dell announced. "The future of business, Rodney. Every man in London is going to want one. It's got a clock, a calendar, and a button that makes a beeping noise. Dell, everyone has these on their phones now." Rodney said, holding one up. "It's 2002. This technology is practically prehistoric." Dell shook his head, a look of pity on his face. "That's where you're wrong, Rodney. People miss the tactile experience. They want something they can hold, something with weight. These are vintage tech. It's the latest trend. I'm telling you, by this time next year." Rodney cut him off. "We'll be millionaires. I know. Dell, I know." They stood there for a moment, two brothers in a three-wheeled van, surrounded by the debris of 100 failed schemes and the flickering hope of 1,000 more. "I'll fetch the suitcase from the van," Dell repeated, a small smile playing on his lips. "Because where it all comes from is a mystery, Rodney. But as long as we're together, we're the bestest." Rodney looked at the suitcase, then at his brother. He let out a long, slow breath and climbed into the passenger seat. "All right, Dell, drive on. But if we pass a skip, those shock absorbers are going in it." "Deal?" Dell laughed, turning the key. The engine coughed, spluttered, and finally roared into life. "Next stop, Paris. Or maybe just the car boot sail in Sidcup. Mange tout, Rodney. Mange tout." Chapter 18, The Market's Cold Shoulder. Monday morning in Peckham Market was a sensory assault. The air was a thick soup of diesel fumes, frying onions from a nearby burger van, and the desperate cries of stallholders trying to offload items that had clearly fallen off the back of a very fast-moving truck. Rodney stood behind a makeshift table, shivering in a thin coat. He was holding one of the electronic personal organizers. He looked about as comfortable as a penguin in a sauna. "Go on, Rodney. Give Em the patter," Dell urged from the safety of a nearby tea stall. "Don't just stand there like a Statue of Liberty with a hangover. Sell the dream." Rodney cleared his throat. Step up, everyone. Organize your life. With this plastic thing, it has a clock, and it beeps." A woman in a tracksuit stopped and looked at the device. "Does it have a camera?" "No," Rodney said honestly. "Does it have the internet?" "No." "What does it do then?" "Well," Rodney struggled, "if you forget what day it is, you can press this button and it will tell you. provided you set the date correctly, which is quite a complex process, to be honest. The woman walked away. Shaking her head, Dell stormed over, his face redder than a ripe tomato. Rodney, what are you doing? You're not selling a funeral, you're selling the future. Look, watch the master. Dell grabbed an organizer and held it aloft. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me. Are you tired of carrying around heavy books? Are you tired of losing your place in your diary? Introducing the Trotter 2000. It's used by astronauts. It's used by international spies. It's so secret that even the government doesn't want you to have won. A small crowd gathered. Those eyes sparkled. It's got a high-definition liquid crystal display. It's got a built-in alarm system to warn you of approaching birthdays. And for today only, because my brother here has just been made managing director and he's feeling generous, you can have it for a tenner. A tenner. A man shouted. I can get a real one for a $5 down at the pound shop. Ah, but does the pound shop one come with a lifetime guarantee from Trotter's independent traders? Dell shot back. And does it have the emergency beep function? I think not. The crowd began to disperse. Rodney sighed. Dell, it's no use. People aren't stupid. They know a piece of junk when they see one. Junk, Dell whispered, horrified. This is vintage, Rodney. It's retro. We just haven't found our target market yet. We need a specialist buyer. Like who? A museum for failed inventions. No, Dell said, a slow grin spreading across his face. I know exactly who. Boyke. Chapter 19, The Strategy Meeting. That evening, the living room of Nelson Mandela House was converted into a high-level boardroom. Rodney was sitting at the table with a notepad, trying to look professional. Raquel was in the kitchen, and the distant sound of Damien playing a video game provided a soundtrack of explosions and digital screams. Right, Rodney said, tapping his pen. Meeting of the Board of Directors. Item 1, the debt. £48,754. Item 2, assets. We have 200 broken umbrellas, 50 fake shock absorbers, and 199 electronic personal organizers. One broke when Dell sat on it. It didn't break, Dell corrected from the armchair. It just redistributed its components. It's an exploding view model. Very educational. Whatever, Rodney sighed. Dell, we need a real plan. We can't keep selling junk to the neighbors. We're going to get evicted. Dell leaned forward, his voice serious. Rodney, I've been thinking. As the managing director, you need to think big. We don't need 100 small deals. We need one huge deal. A deal that will wipe out the debt in one go. And what is this deal? Rodney asked, wary. I've been talking to a bloke called Nervous Nick. He's got a lead on a consignment of, well, it's high-tech equipment. Not more organizers? No, it's medical equipment. Laser-guided, state-of-the-art diagnostic machines. Rodney stared at him. Medical equipment. Del, you don't know a laser from a light bulb. And where would we sell medical equipment? The private sector, Rodney. Private clinics. I've already made a few calls. I've told them we're an international consultancy specializing in healthcare procurement. You told them what? Rodney stood up, pacing. Del, this is fraud. We're going to end up in the nick with Mike. It's not fraud. It's creative marketing. Del shouted back. And besides, we're doing the world a favor. We're bringing down the cost of health care. We're practically saints. You're practically a lunatic, Rodney yelled. I'm the managing director, and I'm saying no. No lasers. No clinics. No nervous Nick. The room went silent. Raquel appeared at the door, a spatula in her hand. Is everything all right in here? Everything's fine, sweetheart, Del said, his voice dripping with fake calm. Rodney's just having a bit of executive stress. He'll be fine once he's had his tea. Rodney slumped back into his chair. I can't do this. Del, I'm not a businessman. I'm just Rodney. Del walked over and put a hand on his brother's shoulder. No, you're not just Rodney. You're a trotter. And trotters never give up. We'll find a way. Prove. Kushti. Chapter 20. The Ghost of Millionaires Past. Later that night, when the rest of the flat was asleep, Del stood on the balcony, looking out over the flickering lights of Peckham. The wind was cold, but he didn't feel it. He was thinking about the yacht. He was thinking about the taste of the expensive cognac and the feeling of the sun on his face in Barbados. He missed it. He missed the respect. He missed the way people looked at him when he had money in his pocket. Now, they just looked at him with pity, or worse, they didn't look at him at all. If only Mum could see us now, he whispered to the night. He remembered the promise he'd made to her on her deathbed. He'd promised to look after Rodney. He'd promised to make something of themselves. And for a while, he'd done it. He'd reached the summit, but the fall had been long and hard. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the 1-pound coin from the Gold Rush show. He flipped it in the air and caught it. Heads, we're back in the money, he muttered. Tails. Well, tails, we just try harder. He looked at the coin. It was tails. Del smiled. That's my boy. Always playing hard to get. He turned back into the flat, his mind already spinning with new ideas, new angles, new ways to turn the world in his favor. Because Derek Trotter wasn't just a salesman. He was a survivor. And as long as there was a deal to be made, a story to be told, and a brother to argue with, he was exactly where he belonged. Good night, Peckham, he said, closing the balcony door. Sleep well, because tomorrow the Phoenix is going to do some shopping. Chapter 21, Meeting Nervous Nick. The rendezvous point was a derelict garage in a part of Bermondsey that even the rats avoided. The air smelled of damp cardboard and secrets. Dell adjusted his camel hair coat, trying to look like a high-level procurement officer rather than a man who had just spent his last tenner on petrol. Rodney followed, his eyes darting toward every shadow. Dell, I really don't like this. Nervous Nick is called nervous for a reason, usually because he's about to be arrested. He's just high-strung, Rodney, Dell whispered. Genius often is. A man emerged from behind a stack of rusted oil drums. He was twitching so violently that his glasses were barely staying on his nose. This was Nervous Nick. You got the money? Nick stammered, his eyes scanning the empty street. I've got the backing of a major international syndicate, Nick, Dell said, patting his empty chest pocket. But first, we see the gear, the lasers. Nick led them to a crate covered in a greasy tarpaulin. With a flourish that sent his head flying, he pulled it back. Inside were rows of sleek, silver cylinders with blinking red lights. There they are, Nick whispered. Laser guided, high precision, straight from a high-tech facility in the north. Rodney leaned in, looking at a cylinder. Dell, these look like industrial barcode scanners. Shh, Dell hissed. They're diagnostic tools. Rodney, diagnostic. Nick, how many have you got? 50 units. Take him now for $5,000, and I'll throw in the cables. Dell looked at Rodney, his eyes wide with greed. Rodney, at $5,000, that's only £100 a unit. We sell 'em to a private clinic for $500 each, and we've wiped out half the debt in a weekend. Dell, we haven't got $5,000, Rodney cried. We have, if we use our contingency fund, Dell said, avoiding Rodney's gaze. You mean the money Raquel was saving for Damien's school uniform? It's an investment. Rodney, Damien will have a uniform made of gold by the time we're finished. Chapter 22, The Master's Pitch. Boyke sat in his garden, a glass of expensive-looking champagne in one hand and a cigar the size of a small tree in the other. He looked at Dell and Rodney as if they were a particularly unconvincing set of garden gnomes. So, Derek, Boyke drawled, his voice a nasal symphony of condescension. I hear you've been appearing on television. A very moving performance. I especially like the bit where you lost 50,000 pounds because you didn't know your classics. It was a technicality. Boyke, Dell shot back, trying to keep his cool. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about show business. I'm here to offer you a piece of the future. He opened a small briefcase to reveal one of the silver cylinders. Boyke leaned forward, squinting. And what exactly is this? A very expensive pencil case. It's a laser-guided pathological scanner. Boyke, Dell said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Straight from the R&D labs in Switzerland. It can detect anything from a common cold to a midlife crisis. Boyke picked it up, weighing it. It looks remarkably like a checkout scanner from a supermarket in Croydon. That's the clever part. Dell beamed. It's built into a familiar casing to prevent patient anxiety. High tech. Low stress. These are going to be in every private hospital in London by Christmas. I've got the exclusive distribution rights. Rodney cleared his throat. Well, technically, Trotter's Independent Traders is the sole procurement agent. Boyke let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded like a seagull choking on a chip. Healthcare. Derek, you can't even diagnose a leak in your own radiator. I'm talking about the margins. Boyke, Dell urged. 30% return in 30 days. Guaranteed. Boyke put the cylinder back. I'll tell you what, Dell, I'll take 10 of them. At 100 quid each. Not a penny more. Dell's face fell. 100? Boyke, I paid more than that myself. Then you're even more of a dipstick than I thought, Boyke said, standing up. Now, if you'll excuse me, Marlene is calling. We're having a very expensive lunch. Chapter 23, The Laser Reveal. Back at the flat, the living room was filled with silver cylinders. Rodney was sitting on the floor, surrounded by instruction manuals that were written entirely in what appeared to be simplified Chinese. Dell, Rodney said, his voice trembling. I found the translation for the model number. Dell, who was busy trying to buff the Made in China stickers off the cylinders, didn't look up. And, does it say precision medical tool? No, Rodney said, standing up. It says industrial poultry sexer. Dell froze. A what? A poultry sexer. Dell, it's a laser tool used in high-speed chicken factories to determine if a chick is a boy or a girl. Dell stared at the cylinder in his hand. He pressed the button, and a tiny red laser beam shot out, hitting a picture of Uncle Albert on the wall. But it's laser-guided, Nick said. Nick is a common. Dell, we've spent Damien's uniform money on 50 machines that tell you if a chicken is a rooster. The silence in the flat was absolute. Then, from the hallway, came the sound of Raquel's keys in the door. Oh, no, Rodney whispered. Dell, if she sees these, she's going to sex us both with a rolling pin. Quick, under the sofa, Dell hissed. They spent the next 10 minutes frantically shoving silver cylinders under the furniture, just as Raquel walked in. Hello, boys, she said, looking around suspiciously. Why is everything moved? And why is there a red dot on Uncle Albert's nose? It's a new security system, sweetheart, Dell said, sweating. Trotter Tech Security. We're testing the perimeter. Raquel sighed. Dell, please tell me you haven't bought more junk. Junk? Raquel. This is the future. Chicken. I mean, security is the future. Chapter 24, Domestic Turbulence. The fallout from the laser deal was swift and painful. Raquel discovered the cylinders within 48 hours, mostly because the cat had learned how to trigger the lasers, turning the living room into a low-budget disco. 50 poultry sexers, Derek, Raquel yelled, her voice echoing through the tower block. We could have bought Damien a new wardrobe. We could have paid the rent for 3 months. It's an emerging market. Raquel, Dell pleaded, cowering behind the armchair. The organic chicken industry is booming. Everyone wants to know the gender of their poultry. Rodney was no help either. He had taken to wearing his Spartacus tunic around the flat as a form of silent protest. If anyone needs me, Rodney said, walking through the kitchen with a wooden spoon, I'll be in the Coliseum or the local job center. Oh, shut up, you tart, Dell snapped. I'm working on a pivot, a business pivot. He retreated to the balcony, the one place he could think. He looked out over Peckham and saw Boyke's Mercedes driving past far below. He knew Boyke was laughing at him. He knew everyone was. But as he looked at the silver cylinder in his hand, an idea began to form. It was a crazy idea, a stupid idea, a Trotter idea. Rodney, Dell shouted, bursting back into the room. I've got it. We don't sell M to farmers. We sell M to the entertainment industry. The what? Laser tag, Rodney. We market M as pro-level laser tag kits for high-end corporate away days. We tell M it's a tactical training tool used by the SAS. Rodney looked at the poultry sexer. He looked at Dell. For a second, a spark of the old madness returned to his eyes. Tactical training. For corporate away days? Exactly. Trotter Tactical. It's a new branch of the company. Chapter 25. The Phoenix prepares to fly. It was Friday night at the Nag's Head. Dell stood at the bar, a silver cylinder tucked into his waistband like a futuristic weapon. All right, Trig, Dell said, nodding at his friend. All right, Dell, what's that on your hip? A fancy new torch. It's a tactical marking device, Trig, Dell said, winking. Standard issue for the elite squads. I'm organizing a tournament next weekend. 20 quid in entry. Winner gets a bottle of my finest champagne. Sounds dangerous, Trigger said, looking impressed. Can I be the referee? You're hired, Dell beamed. He looked across the bar and saw Rodney talking to a group of young city types who had wandered in from the more gentrified parts of town. Rodney was gesturing wildly with an electronic personal organizer and a silver cylinder. And the beauty of the Trotter tactical system, Rodney was saying, his voice filled with newfound confidence, is the haptic feedback. It's so precise it's practically clinical. Dell watched his brother and felt a surge of pride. They were back in the game. They weren't millionaires, yet they weren't even thousandaires, but the wheels were turning. The yellow van was still outside, the debt was still there, and they were still the Trotters. I'll fetch the suitcase from the van, Dell whispered to himself, a small, knowing smile on his face. Because in Peckham, The seasons might change and the tides might turn, but a trotter always has one more card to play. Mange tout, Rodney, Dell muttered, raising his glass of cognac. Mange tout. Chapter 26, The Peckham Open. The communal hallway of Nelson Mandela House had been transformed into what Dell called an urban combat theater. In reality, it was a collection of empty cardboard boxes, discarded washing machines, and several miles of yellow tactical tape that Dell had acquired from a confused road worker. Right then, listen up, Dell shouted, standing on a crate of bottled water. He was wearing a headband made from an old tie and a camouflage vest that was clearly 3 sizes too small. Welcome to the inaugural Peckham Open. This is where the men are separated from the boys, and the boys are marked for life by high-intensity poultry sexing technology. The participants were a diverse group. There was Trigger, wearing a high-visibility jacket for no apparent reason, Denzel, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, Nicky Pierce, who had actually brought his own camouflage face paint, and 3 bewildered accountancy students that Rodney had lured in from the local library. The rules are simple, Rodney added, trying to maintain an air of professional authority despite the Spartacus tunic he was still stubbornly wearing. If you get hit by a laser, you're out. The scanner will emit a high-pitched beep to signify a confirmed mark. Actually, one of the students noted, the device is emitting a chirping sound and the screen says pull it. That's a tactical code. Dell interjected quickly. Pull it means point under lethal laser engagement target. Now, let the games begin. He blew a whistle, and the hallway erupted into chaos. Trigger immediately took cover behind a recycling bin and accidentally scanned himself, resulting in a series of frantic beeps that informed the entire floor he was a great cockerel. Chapter 27, Friendly Fire. The battle raged for 30 minutes. Mickey Pierce was surprisingly agile, diving over boxes and tagging anyone who moved. However, the machine's original programming began to interfere with the combat simulation. Denzel yelled, pinned down behind a sofa. My gun keeps saying I'm underweight. It won't fire. Shake it, Denzel. It's the haptic feedback calibrating. Dell yelled back while trying to flank the accounting students. The chaos reached its peak when the hallway door opened and an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Jittings, walked in carrying a bag of shopping. Excuse me, Derek, she said, looking at the camouflage-clad men rolling around on the floor. The lift is broken again. Not now, Mrs. Jittings, Dell hissed, peeking out from behind a washing machine. Can't you see we're in the middle of a high-stakes tactical exercise? Suddenly, a red laser dot appeared on Mrs. Jittings' forehead. Mickey Pierce had made his move. The device let out a triumphant chirp. Target identified, Mickey shouted. Confirmed mark. Mrs. Jittings looked at the screen of Mickey's device. It says ready for slaughter. What does that mean, Derek? It's a metaphor, Mrs. Jittings. Rodney cried, running over to apologize. It just means you've won the round. Congratulations. He frantically gestured for everyone to stop. The first Peckham Open had officially descended into a neighborhood relations disaster. Chapter 28, The Boyke Intervention. I must say, Derek, a familiar, mocking voice drawled from the entrance. The Sass really have let their standards slip. Boyke was standing at the edge of the theater, leaning against the doorframe and looking profoundly unimpressed. Beside him, Marlene was stifling a laugh. "Ah, Boyke," Dell said, standing up and trying to look dignified while covered in dust and tactical tape. "Good to see you. We're just finishing up a demonstration of the Trotter tactical system. High-level stuff. We've got interest from several private security firms." Boyke walked over to a discarded poultry sexer and picked it up. "And how exactly is this supposed to secure anything other than a local supply of eggs?" "It's the psychological impact, Boyke," Dell insisted. "The red dot, the chirping. It strikes fear into the hearts of the enemy. It strikes fear into the hearts of anyone with a basic understanding of electronics." Boyke laughed. "I'll tell you what, Dell, I've got a lot of scrap metal at the yard. If you want to dump these there, I'll give you a $5 for the lot." "A $5? Boyke, I've got 30 entries at 20 quid each. That's 600 pounds in one afternoon." "Minus the cost of the tape," Rodney whispered, "and the repairs to Mrs. Jitting's dignity." "Ignore him," Dell snapped. "The phoenix is rising, Boyke, whether you like it or not." Chapter 29, The Accounting. That night, the flat was quiet. The cardboard boxes had been cleared, and the poultry sexers were back under the sofa. Rodney sat at the table with the gold Rush 1-pound coin, spinning it slowly. 600 pounds, Dell, Rodney said. "It's a start, but we still owe over 48,000. Dell sat across from him, sipping a glass of cheap brandy. He looked tired, but the spark in his eyes hadn't faded. Rome wasn't built in a day, Rodney, and the Trotter Empire won't be rebuilt in a weekend. But we're moving. We're trading. I was thinking about what you said on the balcony," Rodney said. "About Mom. Do you really think she'd be proud of us, rolling around in a hallway with chicken grating machines?" Dell looked at the picture of their mother on the mantelpiece. "She'd be proud that we never gave up, Rodney.